situation in the Senate? Have the dynamics really changed enough to see legislation come out of Washington?
Right. As you mentioned, I mean, that magic number is 60 to get over the filibuster, and right now they don't have 60 votes. So I did see a lot of gun rights activists saying this presidential election is important, but the real action is in the Senate. And if there's going to be movement on some of these federal bills, yes, the House will pass it, but the Senate.
So it's easy to turn the reverse, then
I think time will tell.
hit reverse all the way.
You described some of these gun control groups like Everytown and Giffords as growing and influential. Does that suggest that even if Congress does not pass new laws, the landscape on this is changing, especially as the NRA is shrinking under scandals and lawsuits?
Absolutely, and I think they recognize that the action is at the state level, and they are very active to lobby and to put forward candidates that will pass their agenda.
That's Nick Benson-Stadler of USA Today. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
As COVID vaccination rates increase in the United States, there's a growing focus on the other parts of the world that have only immunized a handful of their citizens. Some countries haven't started vaccinations at all. NPR Global Health correspondent Jason Beaubien joins us to help get a better sense of what's happening globally with COVID-19 vaccination. Welcome back, Jason.
Hey, Audie.
I want to start by getting a lay of the land. Who is getting vaccinated? Who is not?
So if you were to look at the globe, little dots of who's gotten their jabs already, there will be spatterings all over the map. But most of the dots, most of those vaccinations have been happening in just a few countries. Of the roughly 500 million doses that have been given globally, 75% of them gone into people's arms in the United States, Europe, China, and India. And the U.S., with roughly 25% of Americans having gotten at least one dose, has administered more doses than anybody else. But if you look elsewhere, most countries have only gotten a tiny portion of their people vaccinated. Teresa Etienne, she's the head of the WHO's regional office for the Americas, says there's simply not enough vaccine available right now.
Some countries in our region have received 0 doses of vaccines. Other countries are getting enough to vaccinate a mere 2 to 3% of their populations.
And the countries that still have less than 1% immunized, we're not just talking about some small, tiny countries that you might imagine would have difficulty purchasing vaccines, but places like Japan, Australia, South Africa, Pakistan, Philippines, all of them have less than 1% of their people vaccinated right now.
Help us understand what's going on here. Why these larger, wealthier countries also have a small portion vaccinated compared to the U.S.?
It's classic supply and demand. Think about this. The global production capacity for all vaccines pre-pandemic was roughly 4 billion doses per year. To get this pandemic under control, we need probably 10 to 15 billion doses of a COVID vaccine. So that means a major scaling up of production of what is a fairly complicated pharmaceutical product.
So is that even possible?
Yes, it is possible. If everything goes according to plan, current manufacturers say they could come up with about 12 billion doses by the end of this year.
It's a daily traffic jam around 4 to 5 p.m.
Bruce Aylward with the WHO, he says global disparities in vaccination rates, this is driven by
It's the way I choose to travel from Highway 5969 to back to my house. And I can see right here, testing my 4K video if it works or not. I don't know for sure.
Right now, this is not a financial issue.
Oh yeah, let me change it. No, I will change when I get to the gas station.
The product itself, the control of the supply is held by a limited number of countries that have procured most of the doses and the early access to those doses.
So does the U.S. have too many doses, so to speak, more than it needs?
Well, it's interesting because the U.S. has purchased many contracts with companies that have not yet delivered those doses, or with some companies that are not yet authorized to be distributed in the United States. For instance, the U.S. now has 30 million doses of AstraZeneca sitting in storage. The Biden administration says it's going to send some 4 million of those doses to Mexico and Canada, where it is currently authorized. Aylward at the WHO, however, says there are countries in the world that could desperately use the rest of that AstraZeneca stockpile right now.
We have a long list of countries that are very, very keen to use the AstraZeneca vaccine. We simply cannot get enough of it.
Aylward is saying that the U.S. could lend out those stockpiled vaccines now and get repaid later with other doses. But To get this pandemic under control globally, he says these vaccines need to get out to more countries more quickly.
That's NPR's Jason Beaubien. Thanks for explaining it to us.
You're welcome.
The Suez Canal, one of the world's vital shipping routes, is blocked by one of the world's biggest cargo ships. This ship, the Ever Given, ran aground on the bank of the canal and is blocking it. NPR's Jackie Northam reports on what happened and what it might take to move the enormous ship out of the way.
The Ever Given is an enormous ship, about 1/4 of a mile long, so navigating it through narrow waters such as the Suez Canal is a challenge. It's still unclear why, but somehow the bow of the vessel began to drift towards one of the banks. Maritime consultant Basil Karatzis with Karatzis Marine Advisors says the vessel is relatively new, so there shouldn't have been any mechanical issues. A ferocious sandstorm may have played a role.
There have been reports that visibility was low at the time. May have impaired the captains and the crew on the bridge the visibility.
The ship, which is operated by Taiwan-based Evergreen Group, ended up across the Suez Canal. Karatzis says powerful tugboats have been trying to pull the vessel out of the sandbank.
They may have to bring other vessels and take off some of the containers of the vessel. They may have to take the ballast water out of the vessel in order to make the vessel lighter and make, lift itself on the water.
Lars Jensen, the CEO of Copenhagen-based Sea Intelligence Consulting, says supply chains were already in disarray, caused by a ripple effect from the pandemic.
So you have major port congestion, you have shortages of vessel capacity, you have shortages of empty containers. There's a myriad of things that are out of kilter with supply chain already. This then adds on top of it. And that's not good.
Guy Platten with the International Chamber of Shipping says 12% of global trade passes through the canal. More than 100 ships are now waiting to enter it. He says ship owners will have to decide if they want to wait until the Ever Given is unstuck.
The alternative, of course, to Suez Canal is to route your ships around the Cape of Good Hope from the tip of South Africa. But for a typical Asia to Europe journey, that adds 12 days or 3,800 miles.
Platten believes the ship owners will wait a few days to see if and how the Ever Given will be released from the banks of the canal. Jackie Northam, NPR News.